Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first edition of the 2021 news segment that I'll be bringing to you on a relatively regular basis. It won't necessarily be every week, could be every fortnight, depending on whether or not there's too much of a lull in what's going on or not. But I thought I'd take the opportunity to bring you some news headlines with a small h. And just sort of discuss one or two little things that have been announced today, either quite loudly or quite subtly, which is often the way. So we'll start with one or two things that, when I say local, I mean sort of UK really. Well, it's actually not just UK, but we'll crack on with a few little things that were mentioned today on various news outlets. So in particular, I've been paying attention to the usual suspects. So that would be Sky News, BBC News, CNN to a degree, Channel 4, ITV, Channel 5, that sort of thing. Keeping my ear out on the radio. The reason why I do that is because I live with an elderly landlady and she listens to the radio a lot. So when I go and visit her and say hello and bring her a cup of tea or whatever, then the radio tends to be on in the background, so I kind of get a dose of that. And if there's anything that sort of stands out, then I'll make a quick note mentally. And of course, one or two newspapers online as well I'd have a look at just to see how they package the same nonsense, because nonsense is what it is. But I am bringing it you from the horse's mouth, as it were. These are all official headlines. They're all official statistics and guidelines, or whatever you want to call them. This is not plucked out of thin air from me. These aren't conspiratorial kind of equations that have been developed by me overnight just to create a little bit of chit-chat. These are all from official sources, free for anybody to check out. So I'll crack on, as it were. Overnight, excuse me, the Metropolitan Police, that's the police service that's responsible for everything that is London. They're the guys and gals who I had a lovely experience with a few weeks ago on an infamous incident that took part on a coach that was travelling to London to try and reach a demonstration that left Bournemouth. The footage of that you can see on my channel. And that's an ongoing process because that will be looked at more carefully, and legal avenues, I should say, will be pursued. But anyway, these very same people have announced today that 217 fixed penalty fines have been issued to people throughout London who were taking part in altogether about 58 illegal gatherings. I'm already sniggering. The reason why I'm sniggering is because this is making headline news, because if anybody knows the size of London and you think about 217 people, I mean, we had 35 people on one coach going to London that got fixed penalty fines. So we're talking 217 people in a metropolis the size of London. We're talking double figure million population city here. So even if we worked off the the idea that London has 10 million, let's say, it's more than that, but let's just call it 10 for argument's sake and to make the mathematics simple. That means that 0.00217% of the population were, according to the Met, so in breach of COVID legislation. Notice the slip of the tongue there. That they were handed out fixed penalty fines. So it just goes to show, would be the moral of the story for me on that one, how severe and dangerous this all is, that they can only muster up 217 fixed penalty fines for people who have been illegally gathering. You would expect probably, and I'm no genius, trust me, maybe one or two more people would have been meeting up with their friends, as is their right to do so. Human Rights Act, freedom of assembly. Anyway, so there was the first one that made me have a little snigger, and I saw my mate above my shoulder there, had a little laugh at that too. Moving on, the Norwegian Health Ministry says it is now lifting, or will be lifting, flight bans from the UK from 4 o'clock this afternoon. So if I take a quick glimpse at my clock that's over there, that would be in just over an hour's time. So it's 14:55 UK time right now. And that's quite interesting as well, because it seems to be the only country that's lifting it. And this is where all the confusion tactics continue. They keep throwing in these little headlines of like like certain countries are doing certain things, but in actual fact, everybody's actually rolling out the same thing. So it's always giving that illusion that this is an issue that every country is struggling to kind of deal with in their own way, and blah blah blah. When in actual fact, that's total and utter nonsense, because we know, those of us who take a closer look, that there are higher powers at work here that sit well above governmental levels, and in essence, what that means is that they're pretty much all run by the same entities and organisations, institutions, whatever you want to call it, whether it's Norway, the UK, or any other country you like to pluck out of the air. Doesn't matter what country they are, what language they speak. So I thought I'd mention that. Excuse me. I must stop smoking. I do apologise. Anyway, also today in the news, India. Now remember, India is a country that's rather largely populated. It borders on China and was untouched in the early days of the so-called pandemic. I remember doing a show with a fellow compatriot of mine, truth-loving compatriot of mine, who lives stateside, Stacey, and we spoke in detail about how bizarre is almost the wrong word to use. It's a waste of a word, really. How unusually strange it is that a country that lives right next door, or is housed right next door, doesn't get affected, has over 1.5 billion population. Some of the regions are infamously overpopulated. India is a big country. There are lots of areas where you don't see anybody for hundreds of square miles. I get that. But the areas that are populated are quite densely populated. How do I know that? Well, I have friends who live there. They moved there not so long ago, and I'm in touch with them. And also I have family members who have been to India. I haven't been there myself, so even I have to rely on secondary information. But that is pretty good secondary information, if there is ever such thing. So the Indians have approved the new Oxford vaccine for emergency use. Isn't it handy to have a bit of history with a country in terms of colonies? You know what I mean? Again, it shows you that there's a bigger thing at play here, because why would Britain have first go at India in terms of selling a vaccine of any sort, or producing one, or supplying one, let's say? Plenty of countries out there. In fact, there are countries I can think of off the top of my head who actually have many more renowned chemical companies, or companies that are prominent in the world of pharmaceuticals than the UK. Yet it's the UK who has first go at India. So that was quite interesting. So happy inoculations there. That's a lot of people to jab. Now, here's the next little headline that I saw today that was posted by friends of mine, and it was from a newspaper called the Daily Express. And most of us that are watching it have probably heard of an author called Frederick Forsyth. Now, Frederick Forsyth, who is an author, but was also, I believe, just off the top of my head, the youngest ever Royal Air Force pilot in World War II, and also had dealings with the British Secret Services. Strange that how all these authors tend to have dealings with British Secret Services, like John le Carré. It's not his real name, by the way. amongst other things. And of course, the chap who invented James Bond as well. So all these people have got, they've got their fingers in the MI5, MI6 pie, as it were. But anyway, he wrote in the newspaper today, and he posed a very simple question. And his question, which quite surprised me, was, why, Prime Minister, are you using a cure more deadly than the virus? Now, the interesting thing about this is, not that he's stating the obvious. That's not very interesting because we all know, right? Or those of us with eyes to see do anyway. But the interesting bit is why they're pushing it in such a way that it sounds like even members of the establishment are now starting to question what's going on. And I remember having a conversation not so long ago with friends and, reminding each other that this is all controlled narrative, all of it. So when you have, for example, a newspaper who will come out and suddenly start spilling the beans a little bit, like allegedly the Daily Mail did recently, you have to straight away smell a rat on that one, because they are all owned by the same people, right? So if one of them comes out a little bit critical, that's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to give everybody the idea of there being critical journalism and the like, which of course there isn't. At the end of the day, the agenda will be pushed out and it will roll on, and nothing will stop it. Certainly not a complicit and compliant media, right? But I thought that was just interesting that they're now rolling out beloved authors to pretend that they're kind of questioning it all. It's a bit late for that now, isn't it, Frederick? Because we've had since January the 11th, I think, was when the first death was announced, right? So that's a year has gone by, and now in 2021, a famous author pops up with the idea of stating a bloody obvious question. Just thought that was quite interesting. Right. Another thing that I looked at today was the BBC website, of course. And the BBC website, we've got lots of things in there. One or two things I'll go into more detail in a moment, but because that will affect people in person. Because a lot of people talk about the tiers, for example, but a lot of people don't actually know what those tiers actually entail. Don't know the basic stuff like, oh, my hairdresser is closed. Great. What else do you know about the tiers? I'll go into that in a second to round off this news bulletin. But first of all, I'd like to mention this. The NHS have spoken. All hail. And they have said today that the next few weeks, notice the narrative, or pay attention to the narrative, kids. The next few weeks is going to be nail-bitingly difficult. And that a lot is going to be down to staff absences. What a time to have an absence of staff, right? Staff absences. And the new variant, of course. So that combination is deadly, quite clearly, obviously. I mean, if you've got no staff and then you've got a new variant, well, blimey, we're all doomed, aren't we, really? So that's pretty heavy, shocking, bombshelly news right there. So, stock up on your Kleenex is what I say, without me wanting to plug that company. Excuse the pun. So what's happened is the Imperial College London, now they were also, they popped in and out of the news recently as well. There was a chap called Ferguson, who I think is under their employ. Look him up. There was a word that sprang to mind as soon as I uttered his name, but I shan't mention it here because it could well be that my daughter will be watching this because she subscribed to my channel. Anyway, Imperial College London have confirmed. So here we go again with presupposed positions that I spoke about in the previous episode of the news. They'll create a situation whereby all is a norm, and then we work from that. Right? Moon landing, a norm. We work from that. It's Mars next. No, it isn't. Right. Imperial College London have confirmed that the new variant has a much quicker like this wasn't quick enough, much quicker rate of transmission, right, than the original strain. Sharp intake of breath. Now, what that, of course, means for me, quite clearly, that sentence right there, has nothing to do with the speed of a strain or a train or a plane. What that means right there is it's already creating the playing field that will then enable for very quick measures to be introduced, and and all that sort of stuff. The shifting of goalposts will speed up, and it basically offers them more flexibility in terms of putting in a lockdown here, taking out a lockdown there, playing cat and mouse with the public, having fun, and all that sort of stuff. It gives them carte blanche, basically, which, let's have it right, they have anyway, right? So I thought that was quite interesting that they're actually saying that and publicising those words. Not that we needed reminding. But there we go. So there were just a couple of things that I noted down today. There were a few more bits, but I'm not going to bore you. It's already gone into 16 minutes into the video, so I'm just going to speed this up a little bit because I don't want to make these bulletins 35 odd minutes every time, because you'll end up switching off after 10. And I wouldn't blame you, because don't forget, we're being chased by a very, very speedy variant. So time is of the essence, isn't it? Who wants a 35-minute video to watch? Right. I'm just going to go through the Tier 4 breakdown, and I'm going to quickly mention what the restrictions of Tier 4 are. That's the area where I live right now, in Bournemouth here. And I'm also going to let you know of what you can do in Tier 4. So get your popcorn out. Quickly, of course, we're on the clock, don't forget, right? So the restrictions in Tier 4, I'll just read them off quickly, see what you make of this. And it says already, right, the restrictions are similar to the last national lockdown. Okay, bullet points. 1, residents should stay at home. No kidding. Unless they have a reasonable excuse, such as work or education. Okay? I'm not going to go into my take on all of that. I'm just going to read them out to you. Bullet point 2, all non-essential shops must close. Hairdressers, nail bars must close. Nail bars. Okay. Indoor entertainment venues must close. Gyms and indoor swimming pools, indoor sports courts and dance studios must close. You cannot meet other people indoors unless you live with them or they are part of your support bubble. All right, so me and him are all right. People should not leave Tier 4 areas or travel abroad, which is significant to a lot of people, including myself, except for limited reasons, including work and education. Now, I wonder if visiting family or health reasons based on that are part of those limited reasons. I'd have to check that out. I haven't, so apologies for that. Weddings and civil partnership ceremonies are only allowed in exceptional circumstances. What does that mean? You might want to wear pink instead of black or white. Is that an exceptional circumstance? Who knows? Right. Clinically extremely vulnerable people in Tier 4 areas are advised to stay at home as much as possible, right? Clinically extremely vulnerable people are advised to stay at home as much as possible. Now, this goes back into a conversation I had and almost full-blown arguments online with people where, and it's also, by the way, a vigil that we held in our group, the stand-up group a few months ago, where the bone of contention was, because of this nonsense, the hospitals are not accepting people and offering medical help to those who really need it. Okay, and this is another prior example. It says it here. Clinically extremely vulnerable people in Tier 4 areas are advised to stay at home as much as possible. In other words, don't go to your hospital. Well, why? Because they ain't packed. They're not. The government says if they can't work from home, they should go to work. I don't know what I'm missing there. Anyway, let's move on to something more positive, because I want to end this on a positive note. Okay, what you can do in Tier 4, as well as breathe and make a cup of tea, right? So activities that are still allowed include. So that the word include would suggest to me that these aren't the only activities that are still allowed. Far be it from me to be pedantic when it comes to semantics, but I do believe that is what that means. Activities still allowed include unlimited exercise outdoors. Unlimited. So if I want to do squat thrusts all day long, I can. Outdoors. Bit cold for that, but then again, you warm up, don't you? Bullet point number 2, meeting one other person from another household in an open public space if you are both alone. So if I want to meet my mate who happens to be married, he's going to have to leave his missus at home, and vice versa. Even though they would both be from the same household, as it were. Presuming that if you're married, you're living together. Let's just presume that's the case. But what did it say about presumptions? Anyway, again, I won't say it here. Bullet point 3, shopping for essentials such as food and medicine is allowed. That's nice, isn't it? Isn't that nice? It's beautiful. I love that. 4, outdoor pools, playgrounds, sports, courts, golf courses and horse riding centres can open. That's nice. Horse riding. Do the horses have to wear a mask? I don't know. We'll have to ask them. But interesting in that one, outdoor pools. I don't think I'm going to be dipping into an outdoor pool in this weather. It's about -5 degrees centigrade right now. Rather cold. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. No idea. Right. Bullet point 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry. Oh, just a couple more. You can leave home for work, education, training, childcare. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? And for medical appointments and emergencies. Beautiful. That's almost a bit compassionate there, isn't it? You're actually allowed to leave home for childcare, medical appointments. My leg's hanging off. Where do I go? Do you know what? Come on into hospital. We'll make an exception. There we go. All right. Next bullet point, communal religious workshop. Worship. Right. Communal religious worship is allowed in Tier 4. Now that is quite ambiguous, isn't it? Because what does that mean? Communal obviously means with people. What is that? A rule of 6? Is it 10? Is it 30? Is it 15? What is that? Doesn't really tell you. So I guess what you do is you meet up somewhere in a place of worship and play it by ear. Is that it? See what happens. Just do that and go, you know what? 15 sounds about right today. Don't know. And finally, support bubbles are still allowed and children can move between separated parents. I must learn to read correctly. All right, so I'll repeat that. Support bubbles are still allowed and children can move between separated parents. Not strictly true, is it? Because for me, that's where the previous rule of what you can't do in Tier 4 kicks in, doesn't it? Because I'm not allowed to leave the country, even though I'm a separated parent. So I can technically not visit my child if I wanted to. I'm not technically a separated parent. I am a separated parent. So that is, again, there are bits and pieces on there that kind of overlap where, you know, that needs clarification. But I'm presuming really that the not to do in Tier 4 kind of supersede the to do in Tier 4 according to them. Of course, I would see it the other way around. You know, but there we go. So that is a brief summary of the Tier 4 restrictions. I mentioned I'm not going to go into the other 3 tiers because obviously they're less than that. But the Tier 4 is the highest tier we have. Don't forget, just recently the Isle of Wight was jumped from Tier 1 to Tier 4 in one foul swoop. Remarkable, this new strain. They're right, it is bloody quick, isn't it? Very, very quick. So anyway, there we go. There was my news bulletin, first one of 2021. I hope you enjoyed that because I'm trying to put a bit of a cynical and sarcastic spin on it because let's face it, how else is there to approach this? But, you know, don't forget, these are based on official numbers, figures, headlines, whatever you want to call it. They're not me inventing anything or stirring anything or anything like that unnecessarily. It's just putting it out there, having a little chat about it, and that's all it is really. And it's supposed to be a little bit light-hearted as well, because at the end of the day, gallows humour is what's required in these most bizarre of times. Just before I go, I'd like to quickly also say a big thank you to one or two people who I spent the New Year's transition with, albeit online, but it was okay. I enjoyed it thoroughly. So I'll mention you by name. So Algorithm, thank you very much for your time. Thoroughly enjoyed the show last night, and we've developed quite a nice friendship going back now a year or two. So that was lovely. And of course, someone who's very close to my heart, Stacey B. It was wonderful that you were on the show as well. We ended up all doing a podcast together last night. I'm not here to plug the podcast. I'm just here to thank them for sharing that time with me. What better way to, or what, there's no better way, I should say, to spend those strange moments of time, which is like a New Year's Eve / New Year's Day in these sorts of times, than with the people you most care for. In that sense, if you can't visit in person the others that you care for, then what you're going to do. But I'm really glad for that. So again, many thanks, greatly appreciated. And of course, to anybody else out there, I could name a few names here, but I won't start listening off the top of my head because I'm guaranteed to forget a few people. But a thank you to everybody who I'm in touch with. You all know who you are, be it in the online community over in the States or other countries here in Europe, Denmark, Germany, France, Spain, etc. And of course, all my new friends that I've come to get to know within the Stand Up X community, and those of us who are trying to create some initiatives moving forward in these draconian times. Big thanks to everybody there as well. I could name names again, but I won't, because I'll end up forgetting someone and I'll get myself into trouble. We wouldn't want that. I hope you all had a good transition into 2021. I hope this next year, New Year, is a good one. According to the Chinese zodiac, it's the year of the ox, and I was born in the year of the ox, so allegedly this is supposed to be a lucky year for me. On that positive note, it's good night from him, and it's good night from me. Bye-bye.